Today I'm going to be talking about Boichi. I'm going to be talking about the things that I've observed from copying his work and drawing his work. So I am the kind of person where like I see study as the best way to study. Rather, there's probably a better way, but the way I study is that I just copy. Right, I just see a drawing and I copy it. That's how I learned anatomy, and that's how I will keep learning. Right, and then eventually, like along the line, maybe I'll just try and draw it from memory. And so that's how I've been trying to improve how I draw comics, like improve my style, improve like techniques. And so I've just been copying from other artists, right? So I've copied from David Finch, I've copied from Jim Lee, I've copied from Dan Mora, and I've copied from Boichi as well. So, and I'm going to keep doing that, right? It's not a one-time thing, it's something I have to keep doing over and over again and improve on along the way. So today I'm going to talk about Boichi. And Boichi is like he's a Korean-based manga artist. He has done works like Sunken Rock. He has done works like Origin, and he has done works like Doctor Stone. These are like the most popular works that he has done. I believe Doctor Stone is the most popular works, and you've probably seen his work around on the internet. Maybe if you're an artist that on Pinterest and like platforms like that. Is if he's not like if you don't know him, you've probably seen his work. He has really like detailed works. He mixes Western style realism with Japanese manga energy, and his work is famous for how much detail he adds to his work. Like if you look at his work, like his rendering is really he uses really thin lines for his rendering. Like if you compare his work to like a lot of Western artists where they use a lot of huge blacks in a lot of areas, and then they use like really long hatching lines. His own is quite different because he sort of makes the hatching lines very thin, and it just looks textural, like the skin, especially like with the skin looks textural in comparison to other artists. Another thing about his work is how realistic his anatomy is. His characters have really good anatomy, like in like the anatomy is consistently good like throughout. Like if you see like he doesn't use like this exaggerated like cartoony style that most seinen mangas use. Like his work isn't so stylized in terms of how the anatomy looks. The anatomy is structured. It looks like usually looks like a ripped guy. Usually when he's drawing guys, the guys look like fit guys, like they do gym. So like his characters, the anatomy is consistently good, and like with this fused with this his rendering style, you would see like tendons, veins on his characters, especially the main ones. Like you have to draw like a muscular characters, and even like characters that are normal, right? They still look very good. They still look the textures that he draws on them really look nice. Another thing I noticed and observed about his work is how he used blacks, right? He uses black in a photorealistic way. Like if you like were to go to a studio and like take a picture, you would see how the I said the actors, you would see how the photographers would manipulate lights, even like in cinematic settings. Like his work looks cinematic with the lightings that he used, and coupled with how realistic he tries to draw the character or illustrate the characters, they they look like they are in a film. I'm going to show some examples of his drawing so that you sort of get what I mean. And this kind of dramatic lighting, this kind of like, because of the huge contrast, it makes the scene look dramatic. It makes it intense. It makes the scene, you feel the scene as a reader. I don't know, if you check out his comic, you see his manga, you get what I mean. Like even just common stills where the character is just standing still in his like frame, you kind of feel the energy of the character, even though it's not. Because I talked about Ryan Otley's work and how the way he draws anatomy adds energy to the scene. But the way Boichi renders his work, because of he uses techniques like foreshortening and perspectives a lot, it adds a bit more energy to the scene, and how he renders the textures as well. It adds a lot of energy to his scene. Another thing I noticed about his work is that he's very skilled at illustrating machines, right? At rendering machines and like all these sci-fi devices and gadgets, things like that. He doesn't like just draw them as an afterthought. He's very precise and deliberate and consistent about how detailed he makes like things like guns, for instance, things like swords, things like mechanical monsters or huge contraptions. He takes his time to properly render them, and they are consistent and they feel real, right? Even though they are sci-fi gadgets of sci-fi machines, things like that. So it's even more detailed than how I do see Western comics. A lot of Western comics artists do their own, and his drawings are mostly in black and white. So it's something to really appreciate. And that's another thing I noticed about his work. I don't think I would ever like take my time to properly detail a comic like that, or like detail a gadget like that. I don't think I will. He takes his realism to like the next level, to like crazy levels. I don't think that is something I personally would want to do, but it's something to appreciate. And that could be something people could pick from his art. But I'm not picking that. I just personally like the way he renders skin, the way he renders faces. He's one of my favorite artists with rendering male faces. I really like it. He adds character to them. There's a consistency with how his main characters look. Even though and also how he draws expressions, he can really add personality to how a character looks. Like the character Sunken Rock, you can tell how like the type of person he is, the type of personality he has, just by the way his hair is, his hairstyle, and how he carries himself, things like that. These little things, these amazing character designs are what makes his work unique and special, and you can spot his art anywhere. Another thing is like the versatility in how he draws in different genres. So he's I think majorly he's a shonen. I think he's shonen, right? Dr. Stone is shonen. He's a shonen artist. So his style, he can make his style look like like a, I don't want to say like children's, like young boys. Did I say young boys? Yeah, shonen is directed towards young boys. Yeah, he can make his art style fit that genre, but he can also make it fit that genre, but also add like because seinen manga usually is like for like more young adults, I think, and adults as well. So their art style is a bit more realistic. I think things like Vinland Saga, things like Vagabond, things like Berserk, I believe, they're singing, so they have much more real. That's probably why they are my like favorite artists, um, because of how detailed their work is. It leans towards a bit of realism, even though you can see that cartoony elements here and there in most little panels. Panels that are of no consequence usually, but generally seinen mangas, they do have like they're a bit more detailed. Like if you compare his Dr. Stone manga with his origin manga and with his Sunken Rock manga, you can see that like they do look they do look seinen, but like Dr. Stone, for instance, he can add like shonen elements to them. So like there's a great versatility with how he does his work, and that's something I appreciate with his art style. Another thing about his work is like how he draws emotions or like expressive faces. Like the faces are readable, and he adds a significant amount of detail to like the male characters that he draw, like their expressions and things like that. For instance, the male have solid muscular anatomy, and like the you know the bones and the muscle masses are like clearly rendered. I'm not just talking about the faces now, I'm talking about how he draws males versus how he draws females. And but in terms of like anatomy for the females as well, the females, the way he draws females is that they tend to be a lot more softer and sensual in comparison to the men. He draws the men very rigid, very strong, have like this intense masculine personality to them, and things like that. So different artists have different approaches, but one thing I've noticed consistently with these artists that I've studied, because I've looked at Dan Mora, I've looked at Ryan Otley, I've made a video on Ryan Otley, Dan Mora, and Jim Lee, is that the way they draw male is different from the way they draw women. You would see that there's a lot more rendering with how they draw men than how they draw women. They just allow the colorists to sort of do their thing, because they mostly focus on penciling and inking. So they allow the colorists to do their thing, whilst they, like, for in terms of the women, for instance, so the women look a lot more softer. There's not a lot of detail, like on their skin, like on their arms and things like that, while the men, you see a lot of detail when they draw like the deltoid, when they draw like the muscles of the guys. Yeah. And then another thing is that when you look at the guys faces, their faces are a lot rugged, right? They have angular jaw lines. A lot of the times they have realistic eyes, the guys, and there are a lot of expression lines, and like on the characters faces. In comparison to the women, he does draw expressions well on the women, but they are a bit more, he draws them a bit more cuter, in the sense that he draws the eyes bigger. In most cases he could draw the eyes to be like bug eyes, right? While still in this realistic style, he could draw the eyes to look bug eye, if there's a word like that. Whilst the guy's eyes, they do look a bit more realistic. Even though the way he draws eyes, he adds a bit more, like he makes the eyelids a bit more thicker, so that it looks like probably the guys like have some bit of like eyeliner that they just added to their eyes. But they are just, the eyelines are just thicker. That's what I'm trying to say. Another thing is that, like with the women, the way he draws the women, he adds a bit more curve, because he draws a very slimish but curvish women. Like there's heavy emphasis on the hips and the breast of the characters, and they still look good, because he adds like I said, with his lighting technique and composition. I haven't talked about his composition really, but just pretend I did. Because of his lighting, his photorealistic like lighting techniques, they still look good, and he adds a lot of texture when he draws their clothes. So what he does is that he adds like this thing about contrast. If you look at like the guys that he draws, he like usually like guys with suits and stuff like that. In most cases he could make it simple, right, and then make the faces of the characters, depending on what he wants to emphasize or what he wants to focus on. He could make the clothes look simple, but then the character look detailed, or he could apply less amount of detail to the face and the character's body, but then he would add a lot of detail to the clothes. But in the cases of the women, since they usually have softer features, and since they are usually he tries to like accentuate their cuteness. Is that a correct word? Anyways, he makes their clothes very detailed, but then he makes their skin very soft. That is kind of like how he draws women. Another another thing about his art is that he has great paneling and pacing. Right, his comic books. I really had fun looking at his comic books. Like, if not for the story, for the art itself, the art is really good to look at. He packs a lot of like visual information into the panels that needs it, and where there needs to be texture, machinery or extra detail, so that he can pass the point of the story that he wants to pass. He adds it. He doesn't like add so much information. There are scenes where I think he holds himself back when he does that. Holds himself back in the sense that, like, he does want to do it, and he wants to add extra detail, but he chooses not to. So he just like holds himself back and just decides to like make it normal. There are pages where he just like does like panels, I mean, where he just shows the character, because the character is talking, or like there's a conversational scenes. Like, whenever there's a conversational scene between two characters, you don't necessarily need to add all the detail in the room. You mostly need to focus on the character, the expression, so that you can communicate to the audience how the character is feeling, so that there can be connection between the character and the audience, right? If people care about your character, they'll be more invested in your story, and if they are not, they really won't be. So it's not really advisable to be showing all the details and props, or the environments of a character, usually in a conversational sense. There are times that you could show like the environment the character is in on the first shot, but then eventually you have to like focus on the character itself that's being communicated. So he's really good at that. The like he makes good use of dense and spare panels. Dense panels are like panels that have a lot going on in them. There are machines, there's a lot of lines, and there's a lot of people, there's a lot of textures here and there. These are usually like splash pages. These are usually pages that like maybe like there's a big event, maybe he's fighting like a machine or something, or a group of assassins or something like that. Maybe his character is fighting that, or like there's something big that is happening that is like the climax of the story, right? So these are panels or pages that have that are dense, right? And then there are spare panels where there's almost nothing to look at. There could be like an empty background, a simple feature, maybe like a hand, a character's hand, a character's eye. Usually the eyes he draws are not simple, they are very detailed, if I'm being honest. And the reason for this is that he tries to make the character, he tries to make the reader to stop and just take a moment or take a breather and just try to feel what the character is feeling, or feel the moment before the impact moment, because usually there is a calm before a storm. So yeah, maybe after like a spare panel is done, there will be a dense panel, right? So you can feel what's happening. Or usually after a dense panel, there'll be like a quiet panel, or like a spare panel where like things have calmed down, and then we zoom into those little moments. So you could zoom into the character's face, things like that, or zoom into little things. Maybe after like an explosion, you zoom into like an insect that survived the destruction, something like that, and then you tell a lot of story. Tell a lot of story with that. Another thing I observed about his work is that he makes use, just like with all these top artists, he makes use of wide, medium, and close-up shots very well, right? Close-up shots is when the camera zooms in on the face or hand or a character so that you feel the emotion of a character. So like for instance, when a character is crying, or like, if a character is in a compromised position, like maybe there is foam coming out of his mouth. Maybe he took something like cyanide or something like that, and like maybe there's a detective investigating. So you do a close up of that character to really see the situation of that character. Wide shots, like when you see everything. So maybe like something like where there are people on the streets, or like a panoramic view, or like there is a huge battle scene, so you sort of like see everything that is going on. There's a wide shot, and then there will be close-up shots into these little moments here and there. And then there's a medium shots. Medium shots are like in between shots. It's good for showing action or like people talking. So Boichi, and not just comic book artists also, but like filmmakers, they also make use of these shots to tell a story in a convincing way that draws the reader to keep reading, right? So once you like master this properly, you don't need to master like the most ridiculous looking angles. Once you've mastered this properly, and you'll be able to be more efficient with your storytelling, and you'll be able to tell a good story in general. It's something I'm still learning. It's something I'm trying to improve on, and eventually I'll get there. But something I've noticed about his story, and it makes the story more interesting. I personally didn't like. I wouldn't say I didn't like the story that he told, like with Origin. I just liked the art. His story is out. If I were to rate his story, I'm in no position to do that, so I wouldn't disrespect an artist like that. But for me, his story wasn't like the best. But I did enjoy the art. So the art made the story a lot more better. So I was able to read through the entire origin story. I wasn't able to finish the Sunken Rock. I just read bits here and there. I was just flipping through it like an art book to just look at the fun looking art, in my opinion. Another thing about his work is that he uses foreshortening and perspective very skillfully, so that he can add energy or self speed in his work. For instance, whenever someone throws a punch in a movie, they do make their fists or their hands, or like if it's an anime, you see that the character's face is like zooming into the camera, right, to like kind of illustrate motion. And because of that, that part of their body that is in front, and whether that's a face or whatnot, like it would be the largest part of the body, and the rest of the body would be smaller, like sort of like showing motion and speed. And Boichi does this a lot. And in as much as he focuses on like realism, he focuses more on realism, he's still able to add a lot of energy to his scenes. So because of how skilled he is with perspective, and how skilled he is with foreshortening, with using foreshortening, like this drawing that I did here, right? It's a copy of his own work. Because of how skilled he is with it, he's able to make you feel the impact of the scene, to show you when an impact has happened, right? So when an artist uses an extreme angle like that in a panel, it makes the action feel fast and intense, like everything is rushing towards the reader. Then when the next panel shows the result of the action, let's say like someone is rushing towards you, like during a fight scene, and then the next panel shows someone like crashing into a window or something like that, you can feel the impact because of how much movement is being shown in that scene. So Boichi is really good at doing that. Another thing is how much he uses values. His art is he sort of uses values to sort of like control. He's not the one that does this. A lot of top artists do this. He sort of uses values to control the pace of how fast readers go through the work, right? Because you could be flipping a normal book, like you've been accustomed to an artist's art style, and then you're flipping through the book, right? How fast you flip through it is determined by how much like detail some scenes have, right? How much detail a scene has usually tells us about how much value variations is in the scene, right? And you can do that using cross hatching. You can use that using different variations of black, white, and different variations of highlights to the scene. So like most scenes, in as much as his work is detailed in general, most scenes have more details than others. And those scenes where there's a lot more detail, he's trying to pass a message, like he's trying those things where he's trying to pass a message or make you notice something. He adds more detail to those scenes. And then there are scenes that can be, I don't want to say they are throwaway scenes, but they just get the story moving. So once there's like much more let me just show you here in this in an illustration here real quick. So for instance now, for instance, this is a comic book panel, right? And these are the panels in the scene, right? And then in this scene, how would I put it now? In this scene, okay, let's say fight scene. In this scene, we're showing two characters about to fight. Right? And there's a simple drawing like this, right? Let's say something like a stickman drawing. And then you're used to this stickman drawing, right? And then we zoom in on the two characters about to fight, right? And then all of a sudden, maybe the most important moment in the scene is like a character being stabbed or something. For instance, let's say this character over here, all of a sudden he gets stabbed for whatever reason, right? Let's just do this like this, and then do like, we'll make this character get stabbed all of a sudden, just like this, right? And then this character is still here in this fighting pose, and then we introduce a third-party character to the scene, right? So we could pick the moments out of all these scenes that has the largest impact. Could either be the scene where this guy gets stabbed, or the scene that shows the new character in the party. So what we could do now is that we could either decide to focus on this scene where this character gets stabbed, right? Where this character gets stabbed here, and then add a lot more detail to it. Add a lot more detail to the scene. Or we could pick, like, we could then display the new character that is in the scene. Something like that. So depending on, like, if you see stickman here, stickman here, and then this guy is detailed, it's going to make you stop and then take a look at this scene, right? It's going to make you stop, take a look at this scene. Or if this like scene is the one you want to have the most impact, you can then do something like, you could take this character that is being stabbed and then make it the focus of this scene, and then add a lot more detail. You could add like the blood flying out here and there, something like that. And he's able to do this very convincingly. A lot of skilled comic book artists are able to do that and communicate a lot of information with their value lines, right? So and like in terms of comics, it's usually hatching lines. Most people do paintings, so like their paintings they just use proper paints. They don't use hatching lines a lot of the time. So that's another thing I noticed about his art. In conclusion, Boichi is one of my favorite comic artists or manga artists, depending. They're still the same thing at the end of the day. He's one of my favorites, and I've enjoyed looking at his works a lot. And what makes him stand out different from other artists, that makes his work unique. He has like a unique line language. What makes his work unique is the amount of detail he uses, like how he renders skin and faces, like his photorealistic images, right? He just simply use black and white and contrast very well in a very unique way that even like Western comic artists don't use. If you compare his work with that of like other manga artists, you will see that the way he applies blacks is quite different, and the amount of detail he applies, even in fight scenes where most of the times there is a bit of looseness, so that to show impact and to show movement, he also adds details to these scenes and make it like visually interesting, right? His characters have more realistic muscles and bone shapes than usual shonen style mangas, and the characters are drawn are not as like stylized as that of other shonen mangas. And the last thing about his work is how he draws machines, how he draws gadgets, how he draws weapons in such great detail. He pays a lot of attention to rendering like simple things, like in a scene where a character might have an iPad, he could just decide to spend time detailing the iPad and the character at the same time, right? And then the thing that might just be simple just for contrast might be the character's outfit, right? And then the background. So like two contrast, two like simple stuff versus too complex stuff to balance it out, right? So he's very good at things like that, like maybe a character holding a phone, something as simple as that. Like the phone could just be rendered with such good like cinematic lighting, right? Great use of light and dark in his scene. So for me, that's what makes his art style special. I've taken time to look at his work, not all his work, and I've read his work, and I just wanted to do a video on it. And hopefully you like it. I know it's a bit of rambling, but that's what these videos are about. They're not as structured as possible, because if I were to like structure them perfectly, I'll spend a lot of time doing them, and I don't want to spend a lot of time like on these videos. I just want to dish them out. If you like this type of content or this like style, please just let me know. Please leave a like button. I really appreciate it. We're trying to get to 2K. That has been moving steadily, so I appreciate every single new subscribers. Thank you all for subscribing. I appreciate you, and thank you to every single person that shows up during the live to support me or just to say hi. Thank you so much. I try to do live studies every single day, where I just like pick an artist, or like maybe just pick an artist and just copy their artwork so that I can improve and just make observations. It's pretty lighthearted. It's not like so serious, like it's just a vibe. I talk with people, laugh and things like that. So you can join us in that live. I try to go live every single day, and if you haven't, please subscribe to the channel and please like the video. I really appreciate it. Hope to see you in the next video. Peace out. Have a nice day.